What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of LiamPicksFights presents the Dana White Contender Series breakdown. And you know that we're going live for the last time this season, guys. Dana White Contender Series week number 10. And you know that we cannot do it alone. For the last several years, myself and my brother from another, Gordo Gambles, we've been coming on these airwaves and breaking down each and every Contender Series fight for you. We've been doing a pretty damn good job at it, if I say so myself. And right now, couldn't be happier, coming off of a big win for his team. Can Canada get on the board? Let's find out with our guy, Gordo Gambles. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh man, we're gonna have some fun talking some fights today, man. It's a bittersweet show though. Let's be honest here. It's week 10. It is the final week of the season, and we've had some fun. We've made some money. It's been a good time here talking fights on a Monday night, and I definitely look forward to doing it last year. Let's savor in these final fights. We have ourselves some very closely lined matchups here, some very good ones, and I do think it's gonna be a pretty fun card to end the season. Sorry, should be fun. Shout out to the Bills for getting it done. I'm about to jump through a table with these bets too. Let's have some fun here.
I absolutely love it. And my guy Gordo smartened me up before the show, guys. He says to me, if you want to sound smart, you come on the air and you say there's no favorite above minus 200. But the truth is, guys, I haven't even looked at the odds yet. So you guys are going to get my real-time reactions to these odds. I'm not sure what we're looking at. What I did is what I always do. I did my research on the fighters. Now, the main event for me is the one where I still have a little bit of research left to do, guys. I crashed on all these other fights. There's a lot of fights to break down. And I'm interested to hear what my guy Gordo has to say about each and every one of them. Now, many people have assembled for our guy Big Bird as well. He's typically fashionably late. We're expecting him at some point in the stream, unless he fell asleep watching that disaster of a referee show. But without further ado, guys, let's start like we always do at the bottom of the card, and we're going to work our way on up to the top. So without further ado, Mohamed is taking on Jonathan Micallef. It's going down in the first fight of the night at 170 pounds, the welterweight division. Canada. I can't start off a Canadian breakdown without introducing our brother, Gordo Gambles. Does our guy have a chance?
Man, let's talk for a second here. You know, I rep my team, my country very proudly. You know, what we're going to do right away is we're going to take off the Bills hat. We're going to throw on the Canada hat, and we're going to talk some business right now, all right? We do have ourselves a Canadian fighter here. We do have ourselves not only a Canadian fighter, but a guy who was raised fights out of Ottawa, a city where I've lived for the past few years as well, a guy that I have a lot of faith in. And I think when I go out there and do the tape, it looks like this is a prospect from Canada that I do think can have some success here. I think he's a guy who is still young, still raw, someone who is still improving. But let's be honest, it does not sound good to back Canadian MMA right now. We love them. We cheer for them. But we have struggled. We have gone through a lot of lows to get where we are right now. Not a single victory so far this season, Dana White Contender Series, even with a minus 2,000 favorite. And it's just been a tough look. But regardless, I got to have some faith in my boy Mohamed here. I do think he's a fighter who does have some decent skills to offer. He is very aggressive. He is someone who does look to go for that finish at all time and sometimes puts himself in some precarious situations to do so, but someone who will look to go out there, push a very heavy pace, has the cardio to uphold it. And although he hasn't really shown the most diverse arsenal of strikes on the feet, is someone who has looked to make stuff in the ground game as well, has you looked to use that physicality in the clinch, and someone who I do think does have some better
the absolute man of the hour, Yanni the Freak, Big Bird, whatever you want to call him.
What's going on?
I couldn't leave you in the background looking so fresh and fit, my man.
No, I actually just got off of an interview with ESPN. You know, Yanni the Greek, watch out. We got some new teeth on season 7 next year. So, you know, hopefully the interview went well. And as you can see behind me, me and my boys are plodding on the locks in the background. And, you know, we got a couple locks. So, you know, I'm dressed for success and we going to make that money tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Unless you support Canada, then you're not making any money. That's just
I don't know what's going on, man. You got that Australian background behind you. You guys have won enough. We need this. We need this not only for our country, but for our happiness. All right. We have been struggling. We've gone through the highs and lows, and we're definitely at a low right now. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a lot about it this weekend, too. It's going to be a fun one. As I was saying, a spot where I do think this guy still has a lot of improvements to make. A guy who I still think has shown flaws in the striking, has shown the ability to put himself in a precarious situation on the mats, but a guy who has a great resolve, a great ability to fight through situations, a great ability to show cardio, and a guy who does look to hunt for that finish. You look at his opponent here in Jonathan Micallef. He got a cool army of kangaroos with him supporting him, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of great things about him, but don't be fooled. You know what? He's not someone who's perfect. He's not someone who's going to go out there and just demolish someone like Adu on the feet, in my opinion. He is someone who also looks to want to take it to the ground. I would consider Micallef a better position over submission grappler than someone like Adu. I do think he is probably the smarter grappler of the two, but someone who I have seen crumble down the stretch, someone who I have seen tire out, someone who I have seen hurt in the feet. And I do not necessarily think that the disparity on the mat is enough to make him a minus 170 favorite in the spot here. I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm putting a solid year of Contender Series on another Canadian here, but I'm taking Mohamed. I do. I don't care what the bias behind it is. I do not think that Micallef should be minus 170 here. I know Yanni the Freak below me is going to be like, well, I got this guy at minus 110 or whatever you got him at. It's going to be a good line here. But at this point, I do think that the value is on the Canadian underdog this week. He will fight for your money. I do think he has the better cardio and resolve in the later rounds. And as long as he doesn't do anything too stupid on the mat, I do think he has the ability to stay in it and compete here. Let's go, Canada.
I absolutely love this fight, guys, because we have on the one side the Great White North, a perfect representative in Gordo Gambles, and then we have an Australian representative on the panel today, Yanni the Freak. He's surrounded by our freaking kangaroo brethren. Tell us why the pick is on the other side, my brother.
These are actually our diplomats of the country of Australia. And good day, mate, to all my Aussies out there. I see you in the comments. Top of the morning to you. Good morning. Good morning to where is my man Micallef from? It doesn't even say, but we know he's probably from we'll say Sydney, Australia. But good morning to Sydney, Australia. My boy Jono, he gonna come through. We gotta do versus the kangaroo, and I'm taking the kangaroo all day. I had faith in Canada. I did until I bet the under in the Jacoby Smith fight, and your boy from Canada let me down because he wouldn't quit soon enough. So I lost my faith in Canada. Can't trust him to do anything nowadays. But yeah, man, I played Micallef. I smacked that at he was like plus money, open plus money. I threw a couple hefty bets on him. Yeah, as you can tell, the sharps backed Australia. Yeah, well, long gone, but just like Adu's hopes at getting into the UFC, they're gonna be long gone tomorrow night. But all jokes aside, I think Adu's a good fighter. I think he's very well rounded. He has a good kick. I think he has a kickboxing background, which is funny because you watch his fights and he looks to grapple a lot. But the very first fight, he showed some decent straight shots, good on the feet. I do think he's a bit hittable on the feet, and I don't know if maybe him getting used to getting hit in the MMA gloves is maybe the reason why he looks to grapple as much, which I did find it interesting. You have this kickboxing background, and all you do is look for clinch takedowns every single fight. But when you look at Micallef, I mean, he's a grappler himself too. And I think when you look at these face-offs, we got one guy who, I think he's kind of a tweener. I saw him weigh in for one of his pro fights at like 160. You can tell I'm not even sure that he is in the right weight class. I think he could honestly cut down the 155 and he'd probably be in a better fit. And you got Micallef. He's a big boy, man. This guy cuts a lot of weight. And when I look at his Hex fights, yeah, the Adeline Bates fight, he got caught in the pocket, got hurt a couple times there. That's probably not the best look. But when I'm looking at this matchup, I don't really expect too much striking. I expect them to grapple hard and often. I mean, both guys in all their fights look to get in the clinch and look for takedowns. And when you're giving me someone as physical as Micallef, and I've seen him go 5 rounds at a high grappling pace against Joseph Luciano, I can't help but side with the guy that's fought the better level of competition. He's fought into later rounds, 5-round fights, and someone that's just overall, I think he's going to dog out of submissions. And I've seen him in like deep RNCs. I forget which fight it was, but he has good sub defense and he's tough as shit. And he's going to fight for your money in a dough. While I think he could be a good prospect in a couple years, I think right now it's Micallef's time. I think he's more battle tested, and I think he's going to get the submission victory. I also played the submission prop on Micallef. I think that's a decent look in a fight that I see a lot of grappling, and I think Micallef's got a good back take, so I could maybe see like a round 2, round 3 RNC. But yeah, good luck to you, Gordo. Worst case, if we lose, if you guys lose tomorrow. Oh, I'll finish. I was gonna say worst case, if you guys lose tomorrow, you won't have to face the consequences until next year to defeat the allegations. But good luck to Canada. I got my boys down under. Gonna get it done.
And that's fair, man. That's fair. You get plus money, all power to you, man. But let's talk about right here, right now. When the line's minus 170, plus 140, is this still something you'd recommend playing? Are you still hopping on the Kangaroo's back against a guy like Adu who does have a high ceiling?
I ain't gonna let you press me, man. This is playable to minus 500. Look at that gyno. look at the HGH gut, man. You know, he's in close proximity to Thailand, so I'm sure he's made a couple visits every now and then. My boy Ado might be like a wish version of Leon Edwards. You know, we got the true Edwards bloodline fighting this weekend, and Fabian Edwards. Little sneak peek right there if y'all want to make some money on PFL. Play my boy Fabian, but you know, Leon Edwards, Fabian Edwards. I don't know if this guy's the same Edwards, but he looks like him. So maybe that's your path. If you think he fights like Leon Edwards, maybe he gets a.
Nah. He fights like Mohamed Ado, and he's gonna leave it all out there for Canada. Maybe my confidence is too high after the Bills win, but we're gonna back him one more time. You know, I love Yanni the Freak down there, so much love to you, man. But let's get it done for Canada. Liam, I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting matchup. I think both you guys make some interesting points. I'm just going and scrolling over to the prop menu just because I wanted to get a look. I haven't seen any of these yet. It's interesting to me that they've got Adu plus 350 to win the fight by submission, plus 450 on Micallef in this spot. I think both guys are pretty liable to making some mistakes on the ground. I think Pierce made good points about maybe the right defensive instincts in the hand fighting from the rear naked choke position for Micallef. However, I did think he made some mistakes on the ground. I did think Adu is a very opportunistic submission hunter, right? He goes from being in bad situations to going for, aggressive guillotines from the top position. I like to see that, right? I've actually had a very similar sequence in one of my matches where I got into one of those leg locking exchanges, came out on top, and that's when you have opportunities to attack the neck on good opponents, right? They're going to be expecting it in a front headlock in these kind of situations, but when they sit up in half guard, when they start to feel themselves, you can really put a squeeze on them. And I like Adu's instincts there. He went for that short prayer grip on that guillotine, and that was a really, really tight one. That's why he was able to finish that. And I also liked his heart, right? He got put in that armbar. I'll just tell you guys, there's a lot of people that tap to that armbar. His arm was getting twisted every which way but loose. But it also does show when you're relying on toughness instead of technique, or when you're ending up in these bad positions and bad situations, you definitely can get finished. So one thing I will be looking at when this opens up on domestic markets is potentially an ends by submission angle. I think there will be a lot of grappling here. I think Adu kind of forces that in his fights. But one thing that is a problem for me is when you look at this matchup, I think that Alden Bates should be on Contender Series. Let's be clear about that as well. The guy's got a pretty damn solid resume. And when you go through, he got knocked out by Jack Della, but he has a win over Jack Della as well. He's got a win over this guy who's now fighting on Contender Series in Micallef. So I think he deserves to be, fighting at this level. If he goes out there and wins his next fight in Eternal, wouldn't be surprised if he's booked for week 1 of Contender Series next season. But in any case, you look at this matchup, and I think to myself, if this fight plays out purely on the feet for 15 minutes, then I don't really think that the price is going to pay off for Micallef necessarily. I think he's just a little too hittable. He's a willing fighter, but that's kind of what I saw in the Alden Bates fight, and he gets hurt in a few of his fights as well on tape. He's a tough guy. He's like typical Aussie, right? Like they're going to get hurt if they get hurt and keep swinging and keep fighting and not give up on themselves. But I do think if he gets hurt in this fight, the difference might be the club and sub. I think the instinct is there for Adu. So that's why I kind of want to steer away from a side and steer into somebody is probably going to get submitted in this fight based on their two styles. So if I can't get a good price, then I'll probably just end up leaving this one alone. But that's what I'm looking towards here. Do you guys agree with me that that's a good way to play it? I know Pierce was looking at the one sub angle, but do you think Adu has some submission equity? Because I certainly do, based on what I saw on tape. I think he's very opportunistic, and he seems to me like a guy who would preference the club and sub over just trying to swing it out with somebody or like follow up with ground and pound. I think he'd be happy to take the neck.
I never originally thought of him as someone like that, but he's someone who has shown that he will put himself in submission over position a lot of the time here. It has worked against a lower level of competition. So I'm sure he'll be willing to go out there and engage in those grappling situations. So I don't think that's a bad line. And, you're on the Freak already going out there and pick that submission line. So it seems like something where you got both your bases covered.
No, there were some people calling me out on some shows today about me ruining these sub lines. It's not my fault that I want to back the Kangaroos, but man, I don't know. I don't know if Ado's necessarily the one that's going to get the sub. Honestly, I do have a decent bet on Micallef. I thought the Ado by decision prop was maybe a touch wide at like plus 375. I just find it. I mean, I guess since there's going to be a lot of grappling, there could be a submission opportunity for Ado. But I've seen Micallef dog out hella tight submissions. I mean, he had I forget who it was, but this dude literally had a rear naked choke like under the chin and everything for Micallef, and he dogged it out, and he even reversed position the same round. So he's gonna be one of those dudes you got to put unconscious. So I don't know, but I don't hate the angle. Normally in these fights where both guys are gonna grapple, play the ends by sub. Not a bad angle at all. Can't fault you for.
And the other thing I'll just note is like Bates. I think that was an early stoppage. I don't know if you guys agree or not. Like it was a marginally early stoppage. He definitely got dropped bad, but I think he was willing to keep fighting. I think he was working back up on a single leg. But the one difference for me there is like Alden Bates is a guy, he can be pressed against the fence and he's just going to keep punching. He's going to keep throwing. He's a very violent and aggressive guy looking to knock you out. And I just think Adu is like, if he sees an opportunity, he's going to try and snatch the neck. And so whether or not he could do it sober, I think is probably not going to happen. But if he hurts the guy, then I've just seen so many times like a guy gets hurt and they just don't have the same instinct. So I agree with you though. This should be fun. Should be a good scrap. Maybe Canada's best chance, so knock on wood for that. And we're, of course, rooting for our brother Gordo in that regard. But shout out to our guy Pierce, moving the lines here. And, he's made it a different board, right? We're now looking at a minus 170. So great action at any plus money. He could just arb off for free profit at this point as well. So
Hey, bro, I ain't
going
going arb off. No, bro.
I know. You're holding, dude. You've got the absolute diamond
We got them
hands,
diamond hands. Yes,
I'm just
sir.
saying, if you could ever be in a gambling situation where you don't need to win money, it's a pretty damn good situation. So
You're talking like Yanni the Greek right now. I'm Yanni the Freak, not Yanni the Greek. We don't talk about numbers here. We just talk about winners.
Hey, no EV. F the EV. We're going just for the winner. All right, God bless you for it, my man. Next up, tell me the winner, Pierce. We're going to start with you on Leslie Hernandez and Julietta Martinez. What do you think, my brother?
No, I think Julietta is a good-looking woman. She is someone that I would responsibly let fuck up my life. But I think this girl, I think she's really good, man. I played her. I got like minus 135. I don't know if it was clouded because of her Instagram or whatnot, but I like Julietta Martinez, man. I know it's kind of a presumptuous bet where it's like a lot of the film's kind of hidden, but I will do some more research, and I think there can be fights to be found on the internet. I think someone said something, but I'll look into that, and I'll let you guys know if I can find any more. But when we talk about this matchup, I mean, Julietta, she's 20 years old. She's fighting at a Samurai Fight House, which is, I've been a bit iffy on that promotion. But I mean, you look at this season, they had Kevin Vallejos fighting out of that same promotion. We had Esteban Ribovic, if I'm correct, that fought there. But I know Prado did as well. So, they got some talent up and coming in Argentina. And Julietta, I've heard a lot about her the past couple months. A lot of people have been hyping her up. And I see why, man. You don't see many girls her age, especially just in general, that are just like head kick KOing girls dead. And it's like you see the Taekwondo background. I mean, it's quite evident. I mean, you go to her Instagram, she's like throwing like spinning heel kicks in like the pocket, which is fucking ridiculous to me. But she's landing them with ease, which is kind of insane how athletic she is in regards to her striking. But as you can see in the face-off, she is a bit tiny. I think she came in at like 1 pound under 115, so like 114. And I mean, maybe she doesn't seem like the type of person that cuts a lot of weight. So maybe there's a physicality angle on the Leslie Hernandez side, which is generally like kind of like a thing you want to watch out for in women's MMA. But my thing with Leslie is like, yeah, she has this like hyped up boxing background, but it's like when I watch a lot of her fights, it's not like she's like fucking up chicks on the feet and with her hands. I mean, she's got good striking, it's solid, but I just think her margins in this fight are very thin. Whereas like Julietta, I think she has the higher upside of the two. I honestly think the UFC is bringing in Julietta because she's a young girl. She's got the clean record, and she's probably the one that they could push if she gets a highlight reel knockout, which is what I'm predicting. I played some Julietta money line. I played her KO as well. I think when I see a girl, I know people will say she's fighting bums, but she's deading girls, which you don't see often. So it's like, and she's mean on top. She gets on top. She throws mean elbows. So it's like, I could potentially see her getting takedowns as well. I mean, Leslie, I think both girls could potentially have issues off their back, but I would say more so the Leslie side, just because I've seen it more from her on her tape where she kind of gets stuck on her back. And that's, I think it was her one win against that Brady girl or whatever her name was. They said that it was a unanimous decision. I thought she clearly lost that fight, which was a bit odd that they gave her a unanimous there. But a lot of that fight was her getting stuck on her back. She couldn't really get up. And if Julietta gets on top, man, I could see her raining down some vicious ground and pound. And on the feet, man, I guess you slightly got to lean Leslie just because of the boxing background. But I think Julietta's kicks, man, are gonna maybe throw Leslie off. You don't really see this type of speed and dynamism in the women's division. So I'm gonna take a shot on the girl that I think's got a lot of potential in Julietta Martinez, and I'm gonna take her KO as well. Bit of a sorry if I talked a little bit too much the last two fights. These are my two bets of the card,
Dude,
but yeah,
please talk
let's
as
go.
much as you'd like, my man. There's no time requirements here. Do your thing.
Do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing. Let's go,
Well, I
Julietta.
want to ask Mr. Yanni the Freak here a question. You got the animals behind you. What are your thoughts on the nickname of the Ninja Ferret?
Whose nickname is that? Is that Leslie's?
Martinez.
Oh, that's she don't fight like a ferret. She fight like a bear. That's what I'm gonna tell you that. But bullish nickname. I will say, a ninja. She moves like one. So let's. I think her kicks are gonna get it. We're gonna see a highlight reel, just like our girl
Hey,
Dubin. These South American chicks, they come to bang,
let's
and I think
let's be
Juliet is gonna do
careful
the
here
same.
with the slander. You're going to be
Pierce,
banned from Canada here in a second.
that was the exact comparison that I made in my notes. Funny enough, Unessi Dubin, I was like, there's nothing on tape that says like necessarily this girl should kick people's head off with one kick, but there's videos of it happening, so I'm like, okay, fair enough. Anything's possible in WMMA. Gordo, please go ahead, brother. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Pierce had a lot of good points about this one. I only could find a few fights here for someone like Martinez, but she did look to be extremely aggressive. It's a style that you like to see when you're watching women's MMA. She's someone who will go forward. She will throw herself into the clinch. She will look for these trips. And when she's on top, she's always hunting the finish. Good ability to ride from top position. Nasty elbows in those couple fights that went out there and saw as well. And she is always looking to get these fights done. The lack of tape is somewhat concerning. And as Pierce alerted to, someone who did go out there and fight at atom weight at 105, which is why she looks a bit smaller here as well. But someone who I do think has a lot of room to grow. She's 20 years old. She was having amateur bouts at 16. She was a pro at 18. Like she's, or I think 17 even for that one. She's someone who is still very young, but is always improving. And I do think that she is someone who I think has a very high ceiling in this matchup here. Her opponent Martinez may be someone who is Hernandez might be someone who is more polished, who has gone out there and fought a high level of competition, who has shown that she can compete, is very scrappy as well. And I do not think that Hernandez is no pushover by any means. But when I'm looking at projecting these girls long term, people who can go out there and dominate a fight and live off a favorite price tag, although it's a very small sample size I have seen, Julietta Martinez looks like someone who's exciting, someone who will go out there, be aggressive, and someone who does look like she has all those tools to win the fight. Like Pierce said, the hip dexterity for someone like Martinez, someone who's able to go out there, land those powerful shots, but also be as aggressive as she is on the mat. I do think she's able to have some success here against Hernandez. Hernandez does have some solid boxing, but Martinez is going to be able to not only compete in the striking with her kicks as well, but potentially land some takedowns, threaten from top position, and looking to get that fight out of there. I think it's be a fun one. I think Martinez brings the pace, and in doing so, I think is just a fighter with a higher ceiling here. Not completely all in on her because there is still a lot to learn from her, but someone who I do think is the A side of this matchup, and someone who I will be backing to win this fight.
Yeah, I think both of these women are prospects. I want to start there. When you look at the Leslie Hernandez side, she's still just 26 years of age. She trains at the MMA lab. I think those are two positive things in terms of her career trajectory. But in terms of what my guy Pierce said, I have to completely agree. You wouldn't know that she was a boxer if you just watched her fights. You would think she was just an MMA fighter. No disrespect, but her striking defense isn't there. Not with the hands, not with the feet. She's getting kicked in the head. She's getting punched in the face. And I don't really rate her defensively, right? So I think that when you look at what she does well, her level change to a takedown, it's not bad, right? And when you look at WMMA, that is, again, MMA lab, like written all over it, like Fight Ready. A couple of these gyms in Arizona, they teach women how to wrestle, and it pays dividends, right? Like you see them get to the UFC, and Tracy Cortez and these kind of women, they win a lot of fights because they really know how to wrestle, and they work with men training wrestling, and I think it pays dividends, right? It makes a huge difference in how their game translates, a little bit more physicality. She's not a very proactive wrestler, though, right? In her last fight, it's waiting until round 3 to go for the takedown in a somewhat competitive fight. I didn't like what I saw from, her instincts, right, in terms of round winning. I thought there was some times where she gave away close rounds. I thought there were times when she let her foot off the gas pedal. She's going for takedowns late and not getting them, things that can kind of cost you in the eyes of the judges. And when you look back at the fight that she lost, she made some huge mistakes in that fight as well. That was her pro debut. And I think that it just showed that she has all the pieces that could be put together into a good fighter, but she still has a hard time implementing it. And I don't think that she brings out that, like, her boxing doesn't seem highlighted by any of the ancillary MMA skills she's put together. It seems like she has a disjointed game where she could either try and grapple proactively and have moderate success, and I honestly think that's her best chance to win this fight, or she could go out there and try and use her striking background. She's got a clean 1-2, but she doesn't do that much damage, and oftentimes women are willing to stand there and trade with her a little bit because they don't feel that threat coming back with the power. So for me, that's a little bit of a red flag on her side. It's a closely lined fight. I think that one thing that me and the odds makers maybe agreed on a little bit, Pierce pointed out, she does have the potential to come out here and knock her out, but there's one other habit I saw on tape, which is Hernandez frequently will get to the top position, get threatened by arm bars. There was a French woman, Jade Ardurand, I don't know if I'm mispronouncing her name, but she went for an arm bar and nearly had the grip, right, and just lost it. And I don't think she's a very good grappler. I'd be open to revising that statement upon watching further tape, but she was getting taken down all over the place, and just seemed like, she didn't want to grapple at all in that fight. So when I saw her throwing up, decent armbar attempts, this other girl has 2 armbar wins on her resume, so it's not like she won't attempt that hold. She will, and she'll attempt it from the bottom and the top. And I just think that this girl kind of makes some grappling mistakes. I think she's probably the cleaner overall grappler, but I think this other girl's more aggressive and could just latch onto something and finish the fight quickly. So for me, the ITD, another potential way to play it, you get the KO equity plus in the chance that she submits her. It opened up like plus 450, and because our guy Pierce crashed that KO line from plus 700, they've kind of flipped places, right? Now the KO line is like plus 400, the sub is blown out to plus 700. We'll see what it opens on domestics. I think you could potentially find some value that way, and here's the other thing. I mentioned the end sub in the last fight, but again, like, what is the best chance for Leslie Hernandez to win this fight? In my view, exploiting Argentinian grappling deficiencies, right? It's not like they can't grapple at all, but it's something that they typically are working on getting better at, right? Aylin Perez came into the UFC, and now she can implement the wrestling. Now she can implement the grappling. Her first fight, she got submitted, right? A little bit of inexperience. And a small girl, 20 years of age, against a 26-year-old woman who could just throw her to the ground, be a little physical with her, try and latch onto a position before she gets going. I do think that's some upside for the Hernandez side of this fight as well. And if I'm, from the MMA lab and I'm trying to put together a good game plan for this girl, I'm like, hey, let's not go out there and exchange. Why don't we try and take her back in the first minute and see how comfortable she is, spending 4 minutes in a negative position? That's what I would be trying to implement, certainly. So I'm curious, if you guys, Gordo, did you mention any props that you liked here? I know that Pierce mentioned his in his breakdown. Is there anything you like from a prop standpoint?
I didn't mention it exactly, but I do think potential under could be live in this play. I think that not only is someone like Martinez someone who will push a heavy pace and will look to go forward, but I think that if the true issue with her is her potential lack of maturity and is it going to go out there and crumble against someone who is a bit slick, I do think an under could be a good look. Plus 185 right now. Fight doesn't go the distance. It is a fight between 115 women's MMA fight. I understand why it's priced like that, but the fight style of someone like Leslie Hernandez, someone like Julietta Martinez, I do think creates a lot of havoc, and I do think an under could be live here.
Love it. There we have it, guys. So that's the second fight of the night. Martinez is definitely the Tapology pick of the week. 83% of her supporters. So a lot of people are high on Julietta Martinez. Let's see how that one shakes out when it all goes down tomorrow night. Now, we've got Yadier Del Valle, and he's 7-0. What's interesting is Yadier Del Valle, guys, actually fought Michael Aswell. Okay, so I knew that the name looked familiar, and Michael Aswell, shout out to Michael Aswell, by the way, came back and showed some love to our guy Pierce in the comment section after the breakdown that he gave on the show. When you look at a guy like Yadier Del Valle, it was a very close fight, but I did think he deserved the win over Aswell. He showed a diversity of skills, mixing in the wrestling and the grappling, kind of using a variety of skills to win the fight against a guy who probably would have outworked him cleanly if it was a fight that just took place on the feet. When I go and look at Antonio Monteiro, I don't really know what to make of his performances, right? Because I've seen 2 of his fights. I saw the Lucas Tavares fight. I don't know that guy's any good, right? He was like pulling guard instantly, looking for guillotines that weren't there. I didn't like anything I saw from that guy. So for me, he didn't offer very significant resistance. And then I saw him lose a fight to Antonio Carlos Ribeiro at Shuto 2016. So what do I draw from the Monteiro side? I mean, I don't know. Like, he looks like he's gotten a little more physical over time. He looks like he's a little more assertive getting the top position. I like his ground and pound when he is in the top position. I think that he's pretty dangerous from there. You don't want to end up underneath this guy. But I also don't really think that he's very positionally sound when he's first entering on takedowns. Like, a lot of times guys are getting to these guillotine entries. And frankly, from the fight in 2016 to the fight that he just had most recently, both guys were entering on guillotines. The difference was I don't think Tavares is any good. I thought the other guy that he fought back in 2016 just had a much better understanding of the front headlock, right? You can't front headlock somebody from flat on your back underneath them. You need to create some pressure on their neck. You need to crunch them in. And that's what you saw in the last fight from Yadier Del Valle. He literally finished somebody with that guillotine and he readjusted it from the bottom position. So for me, that creates an interesting dynamic here. You guys know I like to look for a submission prop. I think there's another chance of one hitting here. Yadier Del Valle, I think, is going to attempt a guillotine in this fight. And that's my most bullish read on it so far. So don't know if it's going to work or not, but I definitely think that it's live, and I think that it's an interesting opportunity. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to my guy Gordo as we change the face-off picture to the right one.
Yeah, dude. I think this is a pretty close fight. I think it's one where you could make case for both sides. I went out there and I taped the Monteiro side first, and I'm like, okay, this guy's been fighting for a while. He seems to have a pretty well-rounded skill set. He can go out there and scramble. He can strike. He kind of, it looks like a fighter who is content to go out there and get into some fun scraps, but he definitely has his flaws. I do think he can leave his head on the center line. I do think he can be countered, and I think he's still someone who, at a higher level of MMA can be caught here at certain exchanges, but it's still a guy who I think is pretty well rounded. I mean, he will go out there. He has shown durability. He has shown decent cardio. He has shown the ability to compete in both the ground and on the feet. And I do think he's a fighter who I think has a good overall well-rounded skill set. Whereas you got to get here in Yadier Del Valle, who just looks more so like a bit more dynamic, but not as well-rounded, if that makes sense. He's a guy who I do think is a firecracker. He will go out there. He'll pull, he'll jump guillotines. He'll go out there. He'll throw with some heavy shots here, someone who is potentially a more dangerous finisher than someone like Monteiro here, but someone who is just, I think, flawed in his approach. I don't think he's necessarily the best overall minute winner. I think he's someone who wants to go out there and thrive in those moments, go out there, potentially grab that submission or land that powerful shot in the feet. But when it comes down to absorbing damage, when it comes down to putting together combinations, when it comes together to putting together longer extended fights, he isn't someone who I think has as much success in the long term as someone like Monteiro. So although Del Valle is super live to go out there and grab that guillotine or potentially land some powerful shots on the feet, he can just as well be out volumed. He can just as well be controlled from bottom position as well. And I think he can accept bottom position here as well. So although I think it's an extremely close fight, if you do think Del Valle has the opportunity to go out there and win the moments, I don't fault you. I think he can do that. I just think that the Monteiro has the ability to stay safe on the mat. And if that's the case, I think Monteiro has more control time upside. I think Monteiro has more ability to win optics with his volume, his 3-round ability to go, and his pace on the feet. And I think he's someone who is able to win those striking exchanges. So I ended up picking Antonio Monteiro this week. I missed out on the plus money, but a guy who I think just has a more well-rounded skill set to go over here and get it done. Like I mentioned, Del Valle has probably more opportunistic finishing potential, especially with him jumping guillotines all the time. But a guy who I do think both have their flaws, and I think he's going to make for a very fun fight, and I do not fault anyone on either side.
Fair play, my man. Yeah, looking at it, it's a pick'em fight right now on Bet Online, and honestly, Monteiro, like, his body looks better every time out there. So whatever supplementation or workout plan that he's on, I think he's done a great job. Just looking from 2016 till today, he looks like a much more complete athlete. But on the other side, beast of a man in Yadier Del Valle, something's got to give. Pierce, how do you see this one going down? Is the Cuban problem going to be a problem for Monteiro?
No, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think neither of these two are the biggest problem out there. But when we're talking about Monteiro, my boy, I think Yadier is gonna be a problem for him, man. And I like that we're on the same wavelength, Liam. I got 1 unit on his submission prop when it dropped earlier today. I mean, I think this is a pretty obvious bet when when I was looking at the number I got. Yadier, he's kind of a submission ace. I know he's only got like 2 subs on his record, but I mean, you watch his fights, that's like his whole MO. I'm not sure if he's a black belt or a purple belt, but he goes for subs. He's very aggressive with the guillotines. I think the Aswell fight, he showed a good back take, which is definitely an avenue I could see exploited in this matchup. I mean, Monteiro, he's been bouncing around a bunch of weight classes. Obviously, he looks good at featherweight now. He's fought at lightweight against this Paulo Rodriguez guy, and then the 2 fights he took in Santerion last June 2023, he was it was a 170 one-night tournament. And the first fight, it was like, okay, look, I mean, he got some takedowns. He got the submission in the second round, but it was the Fabricio Martins fight. Like I said, I know it was welterweight, so it's like maybe I'm taking too much away from it. But this dude was on his back the whole fucking fight, and he got an armbar halfway through the third round, and it was like, okay, like this guy's on the ground for 10 minutes, didn't really show much of a get up game, and it's like, and then I saw he was at 145. I'm like, am I watching the same guy? But yeah, it was quite odd to see him cut so much weight. Like Liam alluded, supplements, probably steroids. I would assume so. But my boy Monteiro, I think his hole in his game is the grappling. I mean, we saw the 12 and 14 Paulo Ricardo Rodriguez took him down. You're getting taken down by a dude that doesn't even have a winning record, my man. That is not a bullish look. But I see why people want to play him in theory. Yadier's game, it's like he seems to be on thin ice a lot of these fights. Micallef fight, very close fight. I thought it honestly could have gone either way. It depends how you scored the second round, but yeah, I mean that's Micallef was a good opponent, man. We saw him show out on the Contender series in Yadier. We saw him take his back in round 1. He has good back control if he can get there. I guess my worry for Yadier is that he gets a little aggressive going for like the guillotines and stuff and ends up on bottom. I will say Monteiro, he seems to have decent striking. So maybe if he can sprawl and brawl, that's definitely an avenue that he could exploit Yadier. But I mean, I don't think Yadier is like extremely lost on the feet. He's a southpaw, so we got southpaw versus orthodox here, and Yadier is not really the type of guy that's going to exchange in the pocket. And one thing I noticed with Monteiro, he's a bit slow, bit plodding. I mean, he's got decent Muay Thai, but I think he's a bit he's not going to be able to catch Yadier. I think Yadier is going to use a lot of his like lateral movement and footwork to avoid these pocket exchanges, and I think he's going to look for takedowns here, man. So I honestly think the submission's a good angle. Even maybe wait for domestics, but I honestly think plus 250 solid. I'm waiting around, see if I want to enter in on this money line. All I've seen is Monteiro love all week. If I can get plus money on Yadier, I'll probably make it a play just because I see a lot of holes in Monteiro's grappling, albeit could be just because he's at welterweight. Maybe that's not the right weight class for him. Obviously, since he's at featherweight now, maybe the physicality is different. But I know Yadier has some holes, but I feel like Monteiro is not going to really be the guy to exploit it. And maybe look to potentially fade these guys down the line in the UFC. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing it in Monteiro like some of these other people have been speaking about all week.
Yeah, a few things to note about this. Monteiro is a guy who, he looks like he's got some good skills, but he just makes some mistakes out there as well, right? He's got a lot of losses regionally for a guy coming to Contender Series. A lot of times they're taking these young guys who are undefeated now, 6-0, 7-0, things like that, 6-1, 7-1. And instead, this guy, he's kind of been around for a little bit longer. He's gotten some more experience, so maybe that pays dividends for him, but what I've seen from him is he does very well in fights that he could dominate physically, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to do that, right? Cutting weight typically is a good way to get a physical advantage over somebody, but we do see sometimes when guys cut a lot of weight and then they meet somebody who's already physical for the weight class, it doesn't really pay as big a dividends, and that's kind of what I see here. Is I see Yadier as a pretty physical guy for the weight, so I think he's going to give him some problems, even though he might be a little bit smaller in terms of height. I just think he's going to have the same physicality to offer on fight night. They're probably going to weigh a similar amount, I would think, when all is said and done. So fun scrap. I'm excited
Hey,
to see this one.
can I
shake
say
out.
something?
I
Look
would
at
love
that.
if you did.
Look at that stomach, man. Don't tell me that is not a prime left kick to the body. Goes down. Herb Dean steps in. Yadier Deval. Welcome to the UFC, buddy. That's all I'm going to say.
I love where your head's at. The thing also for me is like going out there and winning a decision against Michael Aswell. That might be the best win on paper between either one of these two guys. And so that was like a gut check moment, right? He needed to go out there and win a tough fight. On my scorecard, he got it done 29-28, throwing hard shots till the bitter end in my notes, right? So I put my notes up on the screen before y'all can go check them out. Like pause it if you want and read them. But I thought that he went out there and earned a close, hard fight against a talented guy, a guy who would not be surprised if he gets the call in 2 months. Hey, we need a short notice guy. We already talked about that on this show before, and I definitely see Del Valle as proven that he's UFC caliber, right? Whereas this guy Monteiro, he's shown some of the right instincts, but for me, I think this is a prove it spot for him. Good fight. Let's find out. All right, folks. Next up, we've got. Oh, if I could get back through the Tapology wormhole. The pride of the great state of New York. If y'all don't see it, I'm representing Section 9 today, but we've got a Section 11 representative, okay? It's Nick Piccininni. He's a multiple-time New York State champion. He pinned Spencer Lee in Gallagher-Iba Arena. He's a special athlete, and I think that he has a lot to offer at the UFC level. Now, last time out, he went out there against a very tough opponent in Jack Duffy, and he was not able to get the clean, clear win that he was looking for. He took that fight on short notice, which I don't think people gave him any credit for, right? He goes out there and grits out a very close fight. I think that it probably should have went Duffy's way, but I thought it was nip-tuck. I honestly said on the night that I thought Nick had done just enough to edge it. I got a lot of shit for that, but I thought it was true, right? And just in the moment, he had gotten to the takedowns, he had gotten to the positions. I know that everybody today goes damage over control. It kind of just goes back and forth every week, right? I just try and judge these fights instinctually based on I've watched these fights for X amount of years, and I kind of feel like I know who's winning a fight. I thought Nick edged it, but I thought it was a super close fight, and I wouldn't have faulted anybody for scoring it for Duffy. Now, if you look at the opponent that he's taking on in this fight, Luis Gurriel, this is not a bad wrestler, guys. He's a very solid wrestler in his own right. Different style, though. Much more of a Greco-Roman competitor. You can go back and watch his run through Fargo in 2012. I know if y'all aren't wrestling heads, you're like, you lost me. If you're a wrestling head, or if you just want to see that this guy's really quality, watch him go beat Bryce Meredith, the guy who went on to be a national finalist, D1 All-American multiple times, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. He beat him. He beat another Santo Curatolo, very good wrestler, right? A guy from New York went out there and beat him in a three-match series to win 5th place at Fargo. Excellent wrestler. However, I think there's a little bit of levels in the wrestling here, right? One thing to wrestle international styles, Greco-Roman, upper body. It's a very niche style, and most guys don't train it year-round. It's a Colorado thing, in part, right? Like, they've got the Olympic Training Center. They've got a little bit of this background for guys that want to go out there and do Greco. So, hey, hats off to him, right? Colorado, cool state. But on the other side of things, Nick Piccininni, he's wrestling at Oklahoma State, a premier Power 5 program in all of wrestling, right? One of the best wrestling programs in the country. By the way, he's competing for national championships, All-American status each and every year. He's a top contender in the bracket each and every year in the D1 level. That's a kind of different athletic pedigree. He's also got the preparation, right? He was supposed to be here for this fight. This guy got called up on short notice. Duffy couldn't make the walk the second time. Whatever happened there, we wish him nothing but the best. Hopefully he's back on next Contender series. But do you have some insight on that, Gordo?
No, sir.
Oh, I thought you unmuted because you had something. So I was giving you the mic. But here, I'll go finish my thoughts here real quick and just say this. I think of a guy like Gurule as a tough fighter, a good fighter. He's got some good wins. But you go back through the footage, guys. He's been hurt several times badly in his fights. I think that he has, relied on his strength, his physicality, his willingness to walk people down, walk through the fire in some of these fights. And I think positionally he could get outmatched here. I think he could get taken down and taken for a ride, honestly. But I also believe that if they just strike it out, I think it's a pretty competitive fight because I do think the guy is there to be hit. I think he's had a couple really competitive striking matches with guys who are regional caliber. He's a tough fighter. He's getting better each and every time, but he's not been a pro for very long. He's kind of been progressing quickly, and I just think Nick Piccininni is a little bit cleaner, a little bit more effective. Maybe it's my New York biases, right? My guy Tatsuro Taira, I said he'd be a future world champion, but I was a little bit too bullish on when it was going to happen, right? When I'm looking at this kind of matchup, maybe I'm a little too bullish on my guy Nick Piccininni because I was there in the Times Union Center when he was getting that hand raised, making the walk. Maybe that's what's biasing me here, but I'll just tell you, I look at these two guys as a slightly different pedigree, slightly different level, and I got to go Nick Piccininni to get the win, and I think he's live for the finish here. I know he didn't get it last time. Duffy's a tough son of a bitch, man, and I'll just say this. On short notice, didn't get it. Really disappointing outcome for him and his team. Then he saw his teammate go out there and absolutely smash a dude and get the contract. If he needs to put a knee through the back of this guy's knee and blow it out, he's going to do it. If he needs, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to try and play for keeps, in my opinion. And Kyle Crutchmer and these guys, they've shown there's a path, there's a blueprint. They've got an idea of how to win these fights. I think Piccininni's the better wrestler, the better grappler. I think he gets it done, but I think it's a hell of a scrap. Gordo, what do you think, my man?
Yeah, man, I apologize for muting there. I just had so many things going on in the head. I just want to make sure I wasn't going to talk while I was still muted eventually. But I think it's a really fun fight. I think it's a very close one. I love me a wrestler when we're going out there and talking about head-to-head 50-50 fights. And although I wouldn't consider this one necessarily 50-50, it's still one where I do like to go out there and favor the guys who have an other opportunity to go out there and wrestle. I think if we look at it from a fundamental standpoint, I think Gurule is someone who would prefer to be a pure stand-up fighter. I think he's someone who is content to keep it on the feet. He can go out there and shoot offensive takedowns, but I still think he's a striker at heart. I still think he's someone who is going to want to go out there and utilize that volume, that pressure, that ability to make his reads and strike as the fight goes on, or that's at least what I have been able to see from when I'm watching him. You look at that against kind of Piccininni, and he's a guy who just wants to take it down to the mat. And although he showed great durability, great resolve, great ability to compete in the feet last time against Duffy, he is still someone who I think would rather take it down to the mat. So although I don't want to call it a pure binary striker versus grappler matchup, I do think it's one where either one of these fighters are going to want to take it to their respective realms and have success there. I have my notes here that Nick Gurule is more of a, I guess it's a tough look when it comes down to maybe overall styles now, but a poor man Charles Johnson, right? A guy who has a very good ability to scramble, get back up to his feet, a guy who will pressure forward and who will show volume, but a guy who doesn't always necessarily have the most. You're muted. I don't know if you're trying to say something, Yanni the Greek.
I said take that back. Don't compare him to my GOAT, bro. That is disrespectful. He
I
don't
don't know,
even
man.
got a mullet,
During
bro.
a Charles Johnson fight
Skull
week,
it.
nonetheless.
That's probably why, because it was fresh in my mind going out there watching that too. And it's a skullet, all right? Like, come on. He's not a mullet. It's a skullet gang. Come on. But I just think that he's a guy who has that forward pressure, who has a great ability to scramble, who doesn't always offer the most one-shot power, although Joshua Van should otherwise. But still, a guy whose model is predicated on going forward, landing a ton of volume, looking to outwork you, looking to scramble up to his feet when the fight gets down there, and someone who can wrestle offensively against his lower level of competition. However, when it comes to seeing this fight as a whole, I do think it's one where there's going to be a clear A side on the mat, someone who is going to be the more physical wrestler, someone who is going to have some success there. And although I have seen Gurule get up really well and scramble pretty well, it's a whole different battle when you have someone as talented as Piccininni on top of you. On the feet, I do not think that Gurule separates himself enough to solidify himself as a favorite here. And I think for that reason, I'm going to side the Piccininni side. I think that the difference in this physicality and the wrestling is larger than the discrepancy on the feet. And I do think that although Gurule can have some success with some later pressure as the fight goes on, I like the fact that Piccininni is on a full camp. I like that he's going to have the ability to dictate these scrambling exchanges. And let's not forget, Gurule is now the guy who is on a shorter camp here. So give me the wrestler here in Piccininni who has the opportunity to take it down to the mat and control it there with his physicality. Liam, plus 1,200 Piccininni KO. I think it might even open up wider on some domestics, but a pretty wide line for someone who I do think is hungry, someone who I do think will have some positional advantages here, someone whose physicality looks to take him to the finish line.
That line is off. Pierce, what do you think, brother?
I don't have a passionate take on this fight. I know Liam would probably take anybody that is from New York, even if it's against Francis Ngannou. Nick Piccininni is still gonna get it done. But yeah, I don't know what to think of this Gurriel guy.
I took Fares Ziam over Matt Frivola, and he's one of my favorite fighters, all right? I called the knockout as well.
Hey, you were probably Fares Ziam's a good-looking guy. I can understand why you wanted to back him, and you wish nothing but the best for a guy like the smiley face killer. But yeah, with Nick Piccininni here, actually, I know Liam Gordo tried to say he knew nothing about Jack Duffy pulling out. I saw the DMs, Gordo. DC hit you up to fly to Alpha Male to, go for his legs, and that's why Duffy had to pull out. But I respect to you. I'm sure Liam has a lot of respect for you because that fight would have been a little close.
Right.
So thank you for
Canadians
doing
aren't
your
always
thing.
nice, man. Come on.
Well, if you were Canadian, a real Canadian, you would have took out Jacoby Smith as well, but you didn't. That's a story for another day. But yeah, with Piccininni, I have so many question marks about this fight, man. I think Gurriel's more well-rounded. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to come to that conclusion that Gurriel is probably the better striker of the two. When we talk about Nick, I mean, we saw his last fight. His striking like I don't think he's bad on the feet. I think he's willing to throw down when it's needed. But yeah, the calf kicks was a big worry, and I was a bit concerned when Dana's like, "Okay, we want you to run it back on week 10," because I was like, "This guy's probably been on crutches for a couple weeks after that fight." So I don't know how well he is recovered from that fight, but I mean, he's been wrestling his whole life, so I'm sure a little injury is not going to do much to him. But yeah, I just don't know what Gurriel's takedown defense is like. That's my big concern in trying to cap the fight. I maybe need to dig deeper, but I couldn't get a good read on how Gurriel's going to look off his back. He seems like he's a good fighter. It's just if you bet Gurriel, it's like I don't know what his upside is in this matchup. Maybe Nick gets tired and Gurriel starts to cook down the stretch, but when they're fresh, Nick's got the wrestling. Probably can take him down. I mean, this dude's a high level wrestler, so I wouldn't put it past him to take down Gurriel. What happens when he gets him down is where I have my question marks. I'm just not sure what Gurriel's grappling defensively off the mat is going to be like. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have any hot takes on this fight. If I had to look for an angle on the fight, Gurriel by decision plus 300. Not a bad look considering that this is a flyweight fight that's favored to go the distance. And on the Nick Piccininni side, I mean, did y'all mention the submission or the KO? Which one were you guys looking at?
Gordo said the KO was 12-1. So that I said that's off, which
I know he got
I'm
like
quite sure.
dropped. He got dropped by Jacob Silva, but
Dude, he got dropped multiple times on the tape. Multiple times. I'll go back and look and see if I can remember the other fight. I remember distinctly the Jacob Silva.
Might have been Trujillo.
There was another guy bad. Maybe. That was a close striking fight, but I actually don't know if he got dropped there.
Trujillo's a vet though, so it's like fighting competitive with that guy's like not the worst.
No, bro. It was Ryan Mandola, 4-5. That's who it was. Ryan
No.
Mandola dropped him. 4-5 guy. And by the way, like, just go back and watch that fight.
Yeah, I didn't go that far back. Yeah, but that's a good shout. Maybe this guy's a tad chinny. It's just with Piccinini, he probably does come off as the type of guy. If he's dropping you, he's grabbing that arm triangle. That's what the D1 wrestlers love. They love their arm triangles. But
I'm
yeah,
telling you, dude. Here's my Narrative Nation cap for this. After Dana insults you, Torres Finney KO1 was plus 500, and he went out there and just dummied that guy. And by the way, he had the sub almost, and he let it go, and he's like, fuck you, and just opened up. Nick Piccininni, if he gets the opportunity on top of this guy, I do think he's going to look for subs, right? But he's not some jiu-jitsu ace, right? And I don't think this other guy is a quitter, but could I see him getting tired, getting his wrist ridden, and getting punched in the face until the referee says, I've seen enough of those, let's stop it? I can't. So that's for me the upside on pitching. I don't think he's going to come out here and necessarily one punch this guy. But the other thing is, if I'm seeing you get dropped by 4-5 guys who aren't crazy athletic, if Pitch hits you one time with a right hand, you might fall over, and he might just get behind you with a rear waist cinch, throw 2 punches, and the fight's over. So that's the one thing for me that's a little different about some of these other guys. They're not athletes like this. They're not like a 4-5 guy off the regional scene can't always close the show when he hurts you. So he got off the hook on that one. It's like if Pitch hurts him here, he's probably going to spin behind him and throw 5 punches and the referee will stop it. So that's just to me what seems a little different, and let's see how it plays out though. I mean, I certainly think it's a good fight, and I don't think Gurule is a bad wrestler. To your point, Pierce, that's the one thing I came away like unclear about in this fight. It's like, is Pitch going to get him down? I was like, I think he's going to, but this guy does have the credentials. He does seem like a guy who's been around a long time, but I think the physicality, the pace, and the the technical ability, the guy who's been around a little bit longer in the MMA gym, I think it's Pitch. So those are the things that make me lean towards that side. And I played his KO last time against Duffy, and it looked like a 0%er. I'll probably be back at a better price this time, and we'll see how it goes. So
correct me if I'm wrong. Take this as you wish. Liam tried to fade him last week. He's at Factory X, so I don't know if he's at the new Factory X where everyone's
he
just
is at the
dipped
new
out.
Factory X. I'm like 98% sure, and they've been doing well. So hats off to them.
Yeah. So he's in a room with good training partners. I'm not sure what to expect. I feel like live bet maybe could be potentially because you have these question marks with the fight. I feel like after a couple minutes you're gonna have an idea of how this fight's gonna play out. But yeah, this is a good fight, man. I know people aren't very hype on Gurriel because he is a bit he can be boring, but I think this is probably the highest level fight of the card, so I'm looking forward to it.
It's funny because he went from being touted as like this crazy finisher, knockout guy to having a bunch of boring decisions, and then he had the Silva fight. And the problem for me with the Silva fight is just that he didn't look that much better than Jacob Silva. Like, he just looked like a Jacob Silva level fighter who's a little bit more durable and earlier in his career. But that was, for me, not the most bullish signal. But I think he also fought with the incentives that I need to take more risks and finish this fight, or I'm not going to get a big opportunity. So, Contender Series presents a similar set of incentives. And I do think that could lead to these guys maybe taking a little more chances than you expect.
It was 5 rounds and Silva was on short notice. So, I mean, you could maybe add that part in as well. So you didn't really have to game plan for him.
Silva hurt him really bad in that fight.
Yeah, I know. That was hilarious.
And dude, didn't he go for an armbar from the top position? I wrote in my notes, I was like, why would you not just stay on the back? Like, you're on the back. Go for the rear naked choke. How many guys do we have to see blow a fight from the back, going for a low percentage submission, armbar over the top, Temba Garimba with the fucking Suluev stretch? I was like, please, for the love of all things holy, go back to rear naked chokes, ladies and gentlemen. They work way better, right? Oh, what a sport we pay attention to. But if that is all that we have on the co-main event of the evening, guys, we'll move along to the main event of the evening. And this is the one I'm going to kick it to my guests. I'm going to let you guys know I've watched very little tape on this fight, right? I try and always do as much deep dive as possible on the fights. And so I've done a lot of research on these other fights. This fight, I really haven't done much, right? And it's just because Heraldo Souza, I looked him up on Fight Pass. I found one fight. I watched it all the way through to the end. And I was like, man, this guy's on Contender Series. It went to a draw, right? That fight, I did not come away very impressed by him. I came away impressed by his toughness, his willingness to take an ass whooping, but he took an ass whooping really bad. He was pulling guard all over the place. He's bleeding all over the place, falling backwards. I thought all the visuals were terrible. He's retreating the entire, last 9 minutes of the fight, all bad. So yeah, I didn't love that. The other guy got tired in round 3, so he started to have moderate success in that round. But I overall came away not impressed by that performance. Meanwhile, on the Nick Klein side, watched a couple I think it was one fast finish, and then him and what's his name, Huckbody or something. They were just going back and forth. Watched a couple rounds of that. I didn't come away thinking like this is the guy the UFC has to have next, but I don't know, man. I'll kick it to our guy Gordo first. Make some heads or tails of this, my brother. What are we looking at?
Sure, man. I think it's one that makes for a very, let's say, entertaining bout here, but doesn't necessarily make for the highest level of competition. Let's put it that way. You look at this fight here, Nick Klein, who is taking it on short notice, someone who I do think has the ability to go out there and grind people. I don't think he necessarily has world beating potential. He's not going to go out there and be a Carlos Prates on the feet. I don't know why that's the first name that came to mind, but anyways, Carlos Prates on the feet. He's someone who wants to go out there, take you down, grind on you, look to tire you out as the fight goes on. Someone who does have, solid wrestling, solid persistence, decent cardio, but someone who doesn't really necessarily go out there and blow you away with his striking. He is someone who wants to take you down to the ground and grind on you that way. Look again, Heraldo Souza, and he more so stands out as a guy who is just like one of those like guys you throw in the card just to entertain people, right? He's kind of killer to be killed. He doesn't necessarily have the best technicality, but he's got a ton of power in his hands. He looks to go forward. He will put himself in precarious situations to entertain the fans. And although he has, a okay submission game on the ground as well, he's someone who does want to keep on the feet and throw without any intention. He was finished by a guy we saw last week in Martinez. He is someone who has been dropped in multiple spots as well. His chin is definitely not perfect, but that's because he's going out there and throwing with such fighting intention. That's because he's going out there standing in the pocket, looking to entertain people, looking to get the finish in his own right. And someone who does tire as this fight goes on. I think we have the entertaining striker here in Souza versus the grinding grappler. So you're inclined, and it makes for a very interesting dynamic. I do think that Klein's ability to shell up on the feet and not really take damage that well could offer some finishing opportunities for Souza, but I think I'm going to end up picking Klein here. As a good friend of mine, LiamPicksFights always says, ABC's always been on cardio, and I do think that Souza's cardio really takes him, deteriorates him down the stretch. Someone who he loses power as the fight goes on, and someone who I do think can be taken down and drained and grinded on, which is what Nick Klein wants to do. However, with all this goes, I think it's a interesting spot, one where I do not have the most bullish of reads. And I think if it was 50-50, maybe I'd go with Souza, but I am leaning with Klein at dog price tag. And also, I did not get onto it. Maybe I'll wait to see how it opens on domestics, but a spot where I do think the under should be wider in the spot here. I do think Souza has a ton of early equity, but will fade down the stretch. And I do think the fight doesn't go as a spot I'll be looking to play this week.
Fair play, my brother. Just in the short time that we've been discussing this fight, I went back and looked, and this guy lost to Vinilto Antunes. And if that name sounds familiar, guys, he got absolutely blasted by Dulatov on Contender Series last week. So that guy and Tunes did spark our friend Heraldo. And then Heraldo also went to a draw with 5-2 Martin Camilo, now 6-2. And that fight, he got beat up really bad. That's the fight I was mentioning before. So couple fights where this guy has taken an absolute shellacking. And just something to keep in the back of our mind. On the other side, a guy with 2 KO, TKO losses between the pros and the amateurs for Klein. So definitely some binary in this matchup. How do you feel about this one, Pierce? What do you think of the last fight of the season?
I think this is an awful fight to have as a representation of an episode that is designed to bring prospects to the UFC. So I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I know short notice, but yeah, the guy they were initially bringing Souza in the fight, they Merc. Oh my goodness, that dude was gonna kill him. So obviously, Souza was not in. The guy brought in as like, oh, we want this guy in the UFC. They didn't, and it's a shame because our boy Party Time Wes Schultz was this close to getting in the UFC. Man, this would have been the one, man. Poor Wes Schultz had to pull out, so his teammate gets to come in, and I am a bit shocked at these weigh-ins. I don't know if I know Liam, you said you haven't taped, but this dude looks a lot bigger than he did in a lot of his other pro fights. So maybe Party Time,
Klein, you mean?
Yes, Klein.
I
He
thought
looks
so too.
jacked. And yeah, I don't know if Wes Schultz got a plug up there in Pure Vita BJJ, but yeah, see, there's something going on in the water there. So USADA, wink, wink, watch out there. But I don't know if we're gonna see any of these guys in the UFC anytime soon. So we might be good. But yeah, my man Souza, he's a bit of a wild card. I know he's very gassy. I mean, the draw fight, obviously, we saw in the second round, he looked tired, but it was quite odd that he was able to win the third round, considering he wasn't looking that good in the second.
Dude,
But
that other guy just fell off the proverbial cliff, my man. I swear to God, that guy just at a certain point was like, I'm in exhaustion.
that was just a weird decision all around. Like, I don't know. I didn't see any points taken, but I didn't also see a 10-8 round either. So bizarre
I
fight.
thought it could have been
But
a 10-8 round too, but
I honestly, I don't know what a 10-8 is nowadays, man. Clearly, some of these judges don't know what a 10-9 is either. Corey McKenna. But yeah, we look at Jorge Filo. I believe that was the 40-year-old that dropped him. Yeah, he did not look good in that fight when he got out of the first round. Somehow came back. But one thing I noticed about Souza, and I'll say this, is he's got power on the feet. And I'm looking at these odds. I'm not gonna play it yet because I want to see what domestics open it up at because like you said, a lot of these props in Contender Series, they wiki cap them. I think the KO for Souza is not a bad look. And I don't know why my picture is fucking spazzing out right now, but can you all hear me well?
I can hear you, brother.
Okay, perfect. Who cares? Okay, yeah, but I just think the KO for Souza, maybe KO one. I don't see that on Bet Online right now, but I don't think that's a bad angle considering you have his problems with the cardio. I mean, that's probably Klein's path is to maybe grind on him down the stretch, like Gordo was implying. And while I see why people would want to play the dog, I think Klein's a bit one-dimensional. I don't like his striking at all. It's very clunky. It's very slow. And if he's not getting takedowns here, I think it's safe to assume that he's probably going to die. So, yeah, maybe Souza KO, KO1's fine. But I honestly, money line wise, not trying to touch this fight at all. I could never lay chalk on Souza. And it's one of those fights. If anybody taped it, you tape the first opponent for the fight and you're like, holy shit, I'm gonna have a big bet on this fight. And then you take the next guy and you're like, oh my goodness, what is this fight? But yeah, that's just my thoughts here. Yeah, it's a shame this is the last fight of the season, but it's pretty obvious the McMahon or Sean Shelby are not doing the best job recruiting this year. So maybe next year we get some better talent. But yeah, looking forward to a final episode this year, guys. And it was a pleasure, as always, to you two and all of the lovely listeners weekly. Shout out to my boy Jewish Better. Hey, Jewish Better, what's the prop of this card, my friend? I know you got an eye for that stuff, so gotta ask my man what's up for this card. We try to make some money.
Well, he said he's been seeing it the same way as you essentially throughout. So we love to see that. Our guys in lockstep right now, a couple friends of the show. And what we always do at the end, guys, is we give an opportunity for our great guests on the show to give us our, quick thoughts, basically. How did they see these fights going down? And maybe a degenerate parlay if they feel so inclined. So thank you very much to our guy Pierce for jumping in this year. It's been a pleasure, right? A great addition to the team. by popular demand each and every week. I get lit up in the comments if I don't bring him on. He's invited every time, guys. Make no mistake. He's a busy man. Look at that sharply dressed individual, right? You know that the man has plans, but he makes time for the show. We really appreciate that. And if you don't mind, Big Bird, give him your quick thoughts on the card, brother.
Hey, man, I'm never gonna let law school stop me from chopping it up with the boys. This fuck this torts. For anybody that is aware of that, fuck that. I'm not looking forward to reading stuff like this. But any escape into the martial arts world and get to chop it up with all the lovely listeners that we see week in, week out. But yeah, man, if like I think Liam probably has it linked or Gordo has it linked. Bet MMA tips, oil check MMA. It's free picks, man. I'm just doing it for the people. And do you want me to give my full card breakdown? Is that what you were asking?
Yes,
Okay,
sir, if you
sorry.
don't mind.
Let me get the jacket on. We got to end it on a bang. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have the first fight of the night, as you can see behind me, and to Gordo's dislike, you know, I see he's got the Canada hat on, so I respect the effort, but it's a bit ironic. I mean, you got the Buffalo Bills jersey and the Canada hat, man. Pick a side. You're either American or you're not, man. I don't know what's going on over
Hey,
there.
hey, closest team to Toronto. All right. You want me to wear my CFL jersey? Come on.
Hey, you got to represent your country, man, in all aspects of sports. But yeah, I can't do it with this Adu guy. I think maybe Micallef minus 150, minus 175 is accurate. That's what I wrote when I broke down this fight. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell anybody to play Micallef at these odds. If anything, I think it's a pass. I think some people mentioned end by sub, not a bad look in a fight that's probably gonna be a lot of grappling, but I just think Micallef's gonna be a bit more physical. He's got the better level of comp, and I've seen him go in extended fights where we see a high grappling pace. So just gonna side with him because I've seen more from him. And I think the physicality is going to be a big factor here, especially if they grapple. And then the Leslie Hernandez versus Julietta Martinez fight. I know this might be a bit of a speculative bet where I'm assuming that Julietta is this really good prospect, which I mean, honestly, I think this is someone that the UFC sees. They look at her highlight reel, they look at her clean record, and they look at her age. She's a prospect that they could build. And Leslie, while I know she's like not awful anywhere, she just seems like very thin margins to me. Where it's like Julietta, I think she has the higher upside in this matchup. She could be the one where if there was a girl to look huge favorite, and we're like, oh, I could have saw this coming. It would probably be on her side. Whereas I think if Leslie wants to win, she's like Liam mentioned, maybe get the takedowns. And the you tell me. You tell me what the UFC is trying to do here. That my man from Samurai Fight House. I don't know his name, but the Argentina meatball. He took down all the fights from us. I was told that was calculated, and he did not want the teams to research their opponents. So maybe he's being smart here, and MMA lab gonna have to get into the lab and try to find some more tape. But that's all I'm gonna say. I think Julietta by finish. Unders could be sneaky, but more so lean the Martinez by finish just because I don't really think Leslie has huge finish and upside here. Played her KO as well and the money line. Let's do it. And then Monteiro versus DeVale. I think this Monteiro guy, I see a lot of love on him. I get why. You look at Yadier's tape and you really want to fade him. I just don't think this is the matchup here, man. I know Monteiro, so maybe a bit of the question mark here is he is coming down. I thought a lot of his red flags were in the welterweight tournament that he had in Centurion 2 fights ago. It was a one-night tournament, but what I saw there was someone that did not have a good bottom game. And when I look at DeVal, while I acknowledge that potentially he's gets a little too sub over position, I think when you're going up against a guy like Monteiro who gives up a lot of bad positions on the mat, he turns his back a lot. I think Yadier is going to have a high chance to maybe find a sub here. And at plus money, I don't mind maybe a look there, but I'm going to be patient, not going to rush it yet because I think Monteiro is going to keep taking money. But yeah, if Yadier can get it to the mat, man, I think it'll be in his world and wouldn't mind a submission look there as well. I think that's one of the better props of the whole card, considering he's going to attack subs the whole fight. And then Gurule Piccininni, don't really have a passionate take here, man. I have a lot of questions on Gurriel's grappling defense. And while we know Nick has the high class wrestling, I think Gurriel is a proper test, man. I think he's more put together than Duffy, but they're very different matchups. Whereas Duffy is a bit of a wild card. You don't know what you're getting from him. Gurriel, he's a lot more refined, a lot more technical. But like I said, not really sure how the grappling is going to play out here. So I'm not going to plant my flag. But yeah, it's a good fight, man. I think maybe look to live bet it if you can get a read on how the grappling's playing out. I will argue I think Gurriel could potentially have a cardio edge here, considering we saw Nick slow down a little bit his last fight, and Gurriel trains at elevation. So, I think he's in shape. I know it's short notice, but he seems like the type of guy that's always ready. He knew this opportunity was coming. So maybe look to live bet Gurriel if you think Nick's wrestling a little too hard early. But yeah, main event Souza versus Klein. Don't really have hot take there. I think both these guys are very low level, and Souza probably more dangerous. He probably is going to find the knockout just because Klein's so hittable on the feet, and I don't really rate his wrestling too well. But if it gets out of the first round, man, I could potentially see an angle to live bet Klein, as that's kind of his path, is to get Souza out of the first round where he's most explosive and look to drag it out in the clinch. So maybe a KO one look on Souza. Or if you want maybe a Klein sub. I mean, I think it's binary in where Souza either finishes him on the feet early or Klein wears on him and finds the sub late. But yeah, nothing too crazy on that fight. Yeah, that's it, guys. I appreciate the hospitality week in, week out. Gordo, I know it's all banner at the end of the day, but for your sake, man, I hope you guys get it done tomorrow. And because Canada, they need somebody, man. I know they got the Edmonton card coming up, but it's not looking hot for the Canadians. They can't even find a Canadian to headline that card. That's the state of Canadian MMA as we speak.
Where is the Ayman Zahabi headliner that we all needed? That's all I'm asking.
Why is Brad Katona in Las Vegas this weekend? That is all I'm asking as well, man. They don't even want all the Canadian guys. They know they're boring. But hey, maybe Mohamed Ado is the answer. You tell me, Gordon.
Gordo, please give us the quick picks, my brother. It's been another great season. It's always a pleasure to have you on, my man. I think you've been absolutely crushing in terms of the breakdowns, the analysis. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. My brother, what do you got on the last fight card of the year for Contender Series?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I love breaking down these fights as always, and huge shout out to Pierce for joining us and making a new tradition. Yanni the Freak, background king, whatever you want to call him. The guy's a smart guy. He hates on Canada too much. Kind of deserve it at this point, but that's fine. We'll allow it. All right, we'll go forward. Speaking of Canada, we do have ourselves a very fun fight here. I have been hypercritical of Canada. I bet against La Ramboise with Cagliari there. I am pretty tough on them, but this is a spot where I don't think Adu is a bad prospect. I think if you look at the state of Canadian MMA, we got a lot of worse fighters than a guy like Mohamed Adu. Let's be completely honest here. So I do think he's someone who is still improving his game. I think he's someone who does have a striking background, someone who can utilize that, but has been more so focusing on that wrestling, something that where he does seem to be pretty opportunistic, where he does seem to have really good cardio, where he does seem to have really good perseverance. And although I think he's facing a very solid opponent who may be the better pure jiu-jitsu fighter, I think this guy's got heart, I think he's got resiliency, and I think he's got the ability to go out there and contend in this spot here. I think his striking can be up to par here, and I do think as long as he stays safe on the mat, that this line could look very wide. Plus 140 on this guy, I think is a bit incorrect. If you're quick on it, like Mr. Oil Check MMA, and got plus money Micallef, I think that allows for some opportunities. But the way it is now, I think that allows a bit disrespect for someone to do who does have, I think, a pretty decent ceiling here. Martinez versus Hernadez. Again, not lots to be known about Martinez, but from what we can see, she looks to be a killer. She's extremely aggressive. She goes forward. She's got very good vicious ground and pound there. She does have some really good hip dexterity and kicks there. She's facing someone in Leslie who is pretty well rounded, has the ability to go out there and be a pretty solid fighter. There's no doubt about it. But I think that Martinez just projects better. I think she's got the opportunity to not only have success on the ground, but have some good striking on the feet as well. Someone who is still very young, has been fighting for a very long time. It just seems to be the A side here, and someone who does seem to push a very heavy pace. I don't know if Hernandez can keep up, not only on the feet, but potentially on the mat as well, making it for a pretty fun fight. Betting-wise, I do tend towards potentially an under here. If we can get, a nice little plus 200, I would not be opposed to that there. I think that the style of Martinez will push towards some violence, and I do think she has the aggression, especially on the mat, to go out there and finish that. And if she's not up to par with the level of Leslie Hernandez, that covers that as well. Valle versus Monteiro is probably my least favorite read in the entire card. I ended up siding with Monteiro just because I do think he has more pats going to get done. Yes, Valle has the opportunity to go out there and win the moment. He's a very opportunistic grappler. He does have some solid power himself, but I think Monteiro more so will look more comfortable on the feet, has the opportunity to land volume, win the minutes that way too. And Valle just goes out there, pulls guard, accepts bottom position. I do think that Monteiro has the opportunity to control him from top position as well. And the guy who I see winning a decision more often than not is probably Monteiro. If you're on some violence props, I do not mind that there, but I did side with Monteiro getting this one done on the scorecards. Gurule versus Piccininni. I like me some wrestlers. I like to see some opportunities for the guy to go out there, utilize his physicality when this fight as the fight goes on. And although he did fight controversially last time, completely different opponent. Now he's got a full camp, taking on a guy who's on short notice here. And although Gurule seems to be a guy who potentially has a pretty good future here, Piccininni is still a guy who I do think has the more paths going to get done, utilizing that physicality, utilizing that high level of wrestling, and keeping it close in the feet as well. I do think he'll be strong. I do think he'll be active. And I do think he'll be hungry to go out here after success. We did allude to that TKO line at plus 1,200 being a bit wide, but a spot where I do think I will be siding with the wrestler here and cheering for the New York guy, as Liam would like to as well. Last but not least, Klein Souza, not the highest level main event, but one that I do think it could be pretty fun. I do think Souza is a early KO or bust type of fighter. Does not have the best cardio, does not have the best striking defense, does not have the best overall grappling. And I do think he has a very fun fight style, but one that will cost him as the fight goes on. Nick Klein, not as explosive, not as fun, more so of a grinder out there on the map, but I do think has the opportunity to take over as this fight goes on, utilizing that wrestling, tiring out a guy like Souza, potentially getting a late finish. All the signs point towards probably an under in the spot. It was minus 180. I wish I got on that one there. I'll probably look to play some violence here because I do think it should be a violent one. Maybe potentially fade both these guys when they're in the UFC, but a spot where I do not like Souza hardware, but he is very powerful. Klein just seems to be the more controlled guy. I did pick him at dog odds, but not a bullish lead in there. More so prefer some violence. Should be a fun card.
There you have it, guys. 2 great guests, 2 great quick pick breakdowns. And now I'm going to try and make it 3 for 3 in terms of making it some good quick picks here. And here's the problem, guys. It's not an easy card for me to call. I'll just level with you. Sometimes I have a really strong lean on, like, this is the side, this is the side. On this first fight of the night, Mohamed Adu and Jonathan Micallef, I think this is a tough fight to call. I respect both guys in terms of they're young. They're both improving. I think they will both be in the UFC at some point. I think Adu is very solid for Canadian MMA. Let's be clear about that. But it's still Canadian MMA, so I have some questions about how it's going to translate at the highest level. We've seen Australian MMA very competitive globally, right? They come out, they come to these Contender Series cards, and they tend to do very well. Then you see Haddon come out there last week, comes right from the Contender Series into a tough UFC debut, and he's ready for prime time. Those are the kind of things that we've been seeing a lot from these Australian guys. On the Canadian side of the game, it just hasn't quite been there. So for me, I like Adu as a potential prospect. I prefer, if I'm looking that way, at maybe a ends by submission as a way to cover both these guys, right? Because I just think we've seen him make some mistakes that could have cost him, right? Got his arms stretched. He stayed tough though, right? And then he showed if he can get on top, he can finish the show. He's got good mechanics. I like how he went for the prayer grip instead of a shorter guillotine, giving the guy an opportunity to come up on top. He went short choke, finished it very tight next to the neck. That's a brutal way to put somebody out. And I'll just say, you don't often see guys in MMA get the right grip sequencing to finish guys. Oftentimes they let go of the guillotine or pull themselves to their back. He finished it from on top. I thought that was the right instincts, and I just think both these guys have the ability to put each other away, especially if Micallef gets hurt. For me, Micallef is probably the cleaner guy when they're both just fully sober, but I do think I've seen him hurt enough times in the tape that I think Adu has chances to win this fight. He is a live underdog for that reason, but I understand why my guy Pierce hit the plus money off the board. Micallef is the bigger fighter. He should not be, in all likelihood, plus money in this spot. So I think that he did his job already. Now, you look at the next fight of the night, Leslie Hernandez and Julietta Martinez. I could just tell you, massive A side on the Julietta Martinez side. If you have 2.3 thousand and 1.6 thousand with Micallef and Adu, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. Neither one of those Instagram followings are moving units. 22,000 before you get to the Contender Series. That's Torres Finney. That's guys that are like the top of the bill normally in terms of who's got the most attention on them coming into the card. So Julietta Martinez has a lot of attention coming on. And meanwhile, Dora seems to have these nice, and obviously her name's not Dora. That's what she goes by. Dora the Destroyer is her nickname if you guys are unfamiliar. But Leslie Hernandez, guys, she's been boxing. And you'd never know watching her MMA fight. She kind of has bad defense and a lot of amateur instincts, I feel. And so she's getting better. She's got a good double leg. She's got an ability to get on top. I think she's the slightly bigger woman. If she wins this fight, I think it's going to revolve around takedowns. To the point of my great guess, the head kicks are very fluid and they come from short range. I talked about Chidi and Njokuani. What makes him an interesting striker? He can kick you in the head standing a foot away from you. And she's kind of the same way. She gets her kicks up high, and I don't like the defense that I'm seeing from Leslie Hernandez. So I think we could see takedowns. I think we could see a sloppy fight. But the thing that gives me some faith in Martinez being live here is that even if she ends up on her back, guys, I think she has a chance to win this fight via armbar. I've seen her opponent make some amateurish mistakes in the top position, nearly get armbarred by French fighters. That's not a bullish signal typically. So I think that I'm open to, seeing Leslie Hernandez come out here and show something great. But for me, I think both women are live to finish. And I just have a feeling Julietta Martinez is who the UFC wants to do business with. And Leslie Hernandez, she's still young enough. She's at a great camp. She could come back if she loses here. But I think Julietta Martinez, they want her to be one of these young fighters making the rise up the UFC. And they've signed a lot of young Argentinians. Guys, they were promoting this one all the way back when Kevin Vallejos was on, before Aylin Perez fought. Argentina looking for the three-peat. I think they get it with Julietta Martinez. Next up, guys, we got Yadier Del Valle, and I'm again going to echo what my guy Pierce had to say about this one. We both see the guillotine as a really live path. He talked about some of the more recent fights, some of the fights at 170. I'll tell you about a fight that he had a long time ago where, again, it was the guillotine fundamentals that caused him a ton of problems in a fight that he lost. I don't want to draw a blank on the gentleman's name, so let me go back and check. He lost to this gentleman named Antonio Carlos Iberio. Guys, go back and watch it. Antonio Carlos Iberio threatened with the guillotine multiple times, got the respect and thwarted the takedown attempts by simply attempting the guillotine, and he nearly put him away with it a couple times, put him in some real danger. There was a time, I think it was at the end of round 2, the guy is just like curled up against the fence and he's throwing short punches at his face. Looked like he was about to stop the fight, and then the time ends for the round. But I just don't like some of these guys' instincts when he gets pressed, when there's violence coming back his way. And I've seen a couple guys just give it to him on the regional scene, not really offer a lot of resistance. I think Yadier Del Valle will offer resistance. I think his win over Michael Aswell is aging very nicely, and I thought he deserved that win as well in a closely fought battle. I think he's UFC ready today. He's the slight A-side in this matchup, despite being, I believe, the younger man as well with more experience. Monteiro has more experience, but Yadier Del Valle, I think, has more skill. So give me Yadier Del Valle to go out there and get the win in this one. Should be a fun fight. I'm biased as shit, okay? Don't even listen to me on number 4 if you want an unbiased take. I am biased. I'm rooting for Nick Piccininni, but also I think these lines are off. Maybe I'm crazy, but I thought it was off last time, and I'll say, probably was a little bit wrong about that one, right? The Duffy fight just didn't play the way that I thought it was going to. But Duffy is a tough guy. Duffy was prepared for the contest, and Nick Piccininni took it on short notice. Now, everything is reversed about the situation. Piccininni was preparing for the fight. This guy, Gurule, takes it on short notice, and I don't think he's the better wrestler in this fight like he is in a lot of his matchups. The other thing is, guys, I'm seeing him have competitive minutes and get knocked down multiple times by regional level fighters on the feet. So does he have some pace? Does he have some, volume? Yeah, he does a decent job. Do I think he has the most power I've ever seen? No. I think he's got power in his hands. I think he could clip Nick because Nick doesn't have great defense either. But I think if Nick hits this guy clean on the feet, he could hurt him badly. I've seen it happen against lower level athletes. And I think that if Nick takes this guy down, rides his wrist, and punches him in the face a lot, this guy might not have the energy to go. He trains at elevation. He trains with Roy Valle and them. That's hats off to him. But it's a different thing to spar and fight. And I do think that this guy's had a lot of fights where he felt like he could dictate, he could mix up the phases if he needed to, put the guy on the ground if he needed to. The last couple guys that have tried to take down Nick Piccininni more often than not end up eating a face full of mat and then getting spun behind on or getting tilted to their back, and then he takes the mount. So I think that this is a tough fight to take on short notice, and I trust Nick Piccininni to go out there and really try and earn a UFC contract this time, and I think he could do that with a knockout or with a TKO on the ground by riding this guy's wrist out. I think he could submit him, but I honestly think this guy's got good jiu-jitsu. I think he's going to get hurt in this fight, especially if Nick is able to get him to the ground and open up with some ground and pound. I did not like the guy's chin on tape, and maybe that's a misread by me, but I saw it against a 4-5 guy where he's getting hurt. He's getting put in bad positions. He had to rally back there. I'm seeing him go to decision with average fighters, and then I'm seeing him go out there. By the way, Jack Duffy is better than most of these guys he's fighting. Let's be clear about that. Then you go back and look, and against Jacob Silva, he's on death's door, and then he has to rally back in that fight as well. Silva's a very regional level guy, with all due respect. So at the end of the day, I think Nick Piccininni, higher level athlete, I think he wins. And next up, guys, we got the last fight of the season. Nick Klein, Heraldo Souza. I think this is a binary matchup from what I'm seeing, right? I'm seeing a Heraldo Souza that doesn't impress me. He's got knockout power. He's got an ability to go out there and close the show early. He seems like a classic Evolução Thai guy. They typically have poor cardio, shit grappling, and an ability to go out there and swang and bang on the feet and kill somebody. And I think he can do that. So I think that that's kind of what you're looking at here. Klein's been finished multiple times. However, I have seen him go out there in some extended fights a little bit, exchange some positions. I feel like if he's able to do that with this guy in round one, Heraldo Souza is going to need cardiac, support in rounds 2 and 3. And I just think that for me, it has to be a dog or pass situation based on the fact that I don't trust this guy's cardio. ABC say always bet on cardio. I don't trust this guy's chin. I'm seeing him get rocked all over the place in those fights that he goes to the draw in. And I also don't really trust his grappling, right? I'm seeing him get taken down. I'm seeing him pull guard from neutral positions. He just seems to me like a guy who doesn't like meeting resistance in fights. So I think on the other side, like he's the more athletic guy. Probably the UFC would rather do business with him. But it just seems like Nick Klein, if he gets the back one time, could win this fight. And he's plus money in this spot. So that for me is the final breakdown of the season, guys. What I will do for you is more tape and research overnight. Obviously, Heraldo Souza, big A side. Nick Klein, with all due respect, my brother, you got to chase my numbers on Instagram, and that's not a position you want to be in getting on this show. So I think that this is the kind of thing that, Klein is not here as like some, UFC prospect, but he's coming out of Pura Vida, BJJ. These are real camp that has produced UFC level guys. He looks like Michael Chiesa Jr. By the way, like if Michael Chiesa has a bastard son, this might be him. So I think that this is a fun fight, interesting scrap, but not the highest level one to close out the season. Any closing thoughts from you guys, or should we close this out and get out of here, gentlemen?
I think that's good, man. I appreciate you as always, Liam, for doing these shows. On to what? Next season, season 9? It'll be a good time, man. I appreciate you both. Wish you all the best luck in the final card, and let's come out in the green.
Absolutely, my brother.
I will say thanks everybody for tuning in week in, week out, and I will bless you all with I got 2 PFL bets this Saturday. Big news, Paul Hughes plus money. Let's run it, and my boy Fabian Edwards. A little poke on that big dog odds. So if Contender Series doesn't go well, or if it does, I'm hoping it does, but we can roll it over on some PFL bets. And like always, guys, thank you. This was always fun chopping it up. And I'm going to miss Contender Series this year, but I'm not, if that makes sense. But let's enjoy these fights tomorrow.
What I'll say is this, Piers. We get tired by the end of this season every year because it's a grind. It's a little bit different, right? A lot of people might break down a handful of UFC fights that they care about each week. I'm breaking down every UFC fight, and then we're coming out and adding another 5 fights, and it's at the beginning of the week, so it changes up your whole process. But more opportunities, a lot of fun. I think that we have a bigger edge sometimes breaking down these prospects because we actually go back, do the tape, look through the record. So for me, it's a great show for those reasons. But my man, it definitely has been a long season. So we appreciate all the time, effort, and energy from not only the great panelists that you guys hear from every week, but the sharpest chat in the game, guys. It would not be the same show without you all. Dogfather, Jewish Better, Haunter, Mark Schillingberg, Azure, Wick,
Aussie
Matt,
fight fan, bro. Come on now. Represent
Tristan,
the Aussies.
Mushroom, Cody, Sal, local Shakes Fist, Reed Kelly, our guy Big Bird as well, Gurule in the chat himself, Bonnie, Johnny. Oh my God, we got everybody in here. Thank you guys all so much. I appreciate all the support. If you guys haven't already, drop a like on this video. Do me this quick favor. Go get subscribed to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel, guys. We are doing a live stream simultaneously each and every week on this channel. That's what we've been doing the last couple weeks, guys. If you haven't shown some love and support over on Plays and Fades, make sure you do it. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a like for our guy, Gordo. And drop a like for me as well, if you don't mind, before you hit the exit button, guys. Thank you all so much for the time, effort, and energy this whole season. To my panelists, to the sharpest chat in the game, God bless you all. Good luck on those bets. You've got options for PFL now from our guy, Big Bird. So hit that rewind button if you need to chase after you lose on Contender Series, or if you need to double down with those Contender Series winnings. Either way, guys, we appreciate the support, and we will be back very shortly with more content on this channel. God bless you all, and come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everyone.